Morning. So, as you know, community is more important than ever. And with this weekly podcast, we at the Experience New Jersey team aim to bring you great conversations with local thought leaders and business owners in our communities. So, join us weekly to hear their stories and insights. And today we have Michelle and Java from Java Compost. Good morning, guys. How are you?
Good
Hi,
morning.
morning.
Good. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being with me. Just to kind of give the audience a little sense of how I met you guys, you were actually, you've been in town for quite a few years. A couple of weeks ago, I had the opportunity to speak at a South Orange Maplewood Chamber event where you were on a panel with other kind of minority women-owned businesses that are really making strides in our community these days. And you caught my eye. I just thought it was very interesting. And I, was reading on your website, Michelle, and I feel like you kind of have some comedy chops. Like I like your undertone of humor in your bio about how Java was raised in San Francisco in California, and how that explains a lot, and how your whole urban jungle brain had a really hard time kind of comprehending what this whole composting thing was about. And so I thought it would be a good idea because I share that with you. I think my, urban, even though I've been in the suburbs for the past 15 years, I was in the city prior to that. And I also just kind of, had a lot of misconceptions about what composting is. And I thought it would be great to have you guys on and kind of say a little bit about yourselves and your story and how you got to start Java Compost. And then we can talk about, some of your programs and how people can take part in this black gold.
Sure.
So great.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I could start because just going off of some of the things that you pointed out, I think growing up in New York City, there wasn't a lot of opportunity to, be one with the land. It was, obviously concrete jungle. So, when Java brought the idea of composting to me, which was a result of him having the experience of working at a school in Newark where they had a beautiful rooftop garden and a 3-bin compost system that he then volunteered to kind of manage and take care of. After that, he brought the idea to me about trying to compost, and we were living in an apartment at the time. And I just immediately felt like it was not something I ever wanted to participate in because I just equated it with mice and with smells. And I didn't really see the value or the point at that point because I just didn't have any knowledge of it and I didn't really understand the purpose of it. So I think what changed things for me was watching this documentary called Dirt the Movie, which is really about how important soil is to our ability to provide enough food for the people on the planet, and how composting really helps because it restores all the nutrients back into the soil. And unfortunately, because of the way we farmed for so long, a lot of the nutrients of the soil are just depleted and don't exist anymore. So after I saw that movie, I was like, oh gosh, this is really not that hard and important. So we gave it a try, and I was excited to not have the issue of rodents and not have any issues with smells. And kind of the idea for the business was born out of that ease that I felt, that composting actually was not difficult. So yeah, then we kind of had the business idea and started our research process and started the business from that.
Great. Yeah. I mean, I love that, you say, and I don't know who, maybe this came from the movie, but that compost is the soul of your soil. And I actually, when I saw you guys speak at the chamber, I put that movie on my list. I'd like to watch it with my son, actually. If I can get on his schedule. He's a teenager, so I have but I definitely want to see it because I think, you're right. Like it's not that hard. And it's important. Like that's super powerful because I think that people kind of just, think it's too hard or it's complicated. And, just doing some research on you guys and just looking at your website and how easy you make it, you make it for people. So why don't we kind of jump into the kind of programs that you have? Because I know you have residential programs, municipal programs, and commercial programs. I noticed that you have the whole concept of being a compost community. Why don't we start with that?
Well, I don't know. In terms of the composting community, I feel like that's a concept you kind of have more kind of communicated. But
yeah, I mean, I think the idea is that we all have the power to do something, and oftentimes, because of the environmental problems in the world, seem so great and seem not within our reach to do anything about. When you start composting, you become a part of this community where everybody's kind of has the same goal, and everybody's contributing and doing the same thing, and that just makes you feel like you're empowered to make a difference. So that's kind of where the community part comes in.
Yeah, I guess it always struck me as something that was like an actionable thing that we one good thing that we could do, where you could participate in the movement, so to speak, and kind of see a little bit of the turnaround. What happens to your material. We try to communicate that by way of social media and some of the statistics that we give back to subscribers and through social media too. But yeah, and I thought that actually there's something kind of immediately gratifying about the experience of scraping your plate, putting it into your bucket, and then knowing exactly where it's going to go. Yeah.
Right.
And then in terms of what we offer as a business, we do the residential pickup. So we're working in 17 towns now, going door to door, doing collections of food scraps. And then we also have, we work with commercial businesses, so restaurants, cafes, juice bars, flower shops, corporations. So we have commercial accounts. And then we also do drop-off options where you can drop off your food scraps. Maybe you live in an apartment, maybe you're outside of our service area for our door-to-door collection. So you can subscribe to one of our drop-off bins. And that's really great because it just allows more people to compost at a cheaper price point as well. And then we do municipally sponsored programs. So we have a few towns now that are actually paying for our services to come and pick up the food scraps. So residents can compost for free in those towns as well.
And I
or
know
maybe like a minimal fee. I think yeah.
they sponsor it. They kind of yeah. And so that Maplewood is one of those. Milburn is one of those. Any other towns around us here on the train line or?
We are in discussions with a few other ones. Verona is looking into the program, and Morris Plains is looking into the program.
Okay, great. Well, I think that you guys do make it easy, and I just kind of want to give people kind of like a tangible idea of like what it entails. Like, let's say you want to get started, you're kind of inspired from to take an actionable step. I noticed on your website, like you guys sell these special compost bags, like very simple, just like a bag of Glad bags, but they're compostable.
Yeah.
And then you just put for like $20 a month, you can put up to 2 bags of 2 gallons each, and then you drop them off at the drop-offs. Like that seems super simple. So I'm going to engage my family and see like maybe we want to give this a shot. And you have a store on your website where you kind of sell everything from like the small compost bags for people who want to start small, all the way up to kind of the bins. Can you talk a little about like if somebody wanted, if a homeowner wanted to have a bin that you maybe service, how does that work?
So when we first started, we did that service. So we would sell people tumblers, which is the large composting unit, and they would keep that in their backyards, and we'd come around to their house and kind of manage that for them. So do backyard composting as like a service. And we kind of phased that out a few years ago when we were able to start the pickup service. So now we just kind of educate and help people, like advise them on which tumbler to get. And then we do a consultation with them to teach them the basics of backyard composting. So what kind of balance you need, because in composting you need a balance of wet and dry, and the wet is your food scraps and the dry is carbon source like wood chips or dry leaves. So we teach them all of that, and how to avoid smells and things like that, and what to do with their finished compost. So we do a lot of education around backyard composting for people that actually want to get more involved in the process.
Okay, great. And I know, Java, you obviously had started off kind of being involved with the school program. How are kids receptive to this?
It runs the gamut. I mean, some can well, in terms of like the DIY approach in a school setting, which is commonly one of the initial ways that young students are introduced to composting. You have some kids that are like really grossed out and would prefer not to get too close. But then you have other kids that are curious and are interested in all the other stuff that's happening in a compost bin. And it really also depends on the rollout. So if you have a teacher, could be a science teacher or somebody who has a passion for it and also is committed to trying to communicate it to these, to young people. It can be a lively experience for young people in a school setting.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I also wanted to point out that, on top of you having the store on your website, you also have like a resource guide that you can download, which really clearly outlines like what goes in the compost bin and what does not.
Yes.
That's like a simple like little graphic, which I thought was great. And you mentioned statistics earlier. I just wanted to kind of, that you mentioned 1.1 million pounds of food scraps. Is that what your company gathered in like a 12-month, like calendar year, or kind of talk to us about what that figure stands for?
That's over the course of the time that we've been providing the pickup service, the curbside pickup service. So, which is now going into, we're almost at 4 years. And obviously, over the last couple of years, the yearly amount has grown, but we just crossed that threshold, a few months ago.
Yeah, and we just to give a sense. So within the last year, 2021, like Maplewood, for example, which is where we used to live and kind of started the business, we had a lot of relationships there. They've diverted 220,000 pounds of food scraps in just 1 year. 7,000 of those pounds have come from their drop-off program, and the rest is just residential and some of our commercial businesses we work with there. So, if you look at it that way, you can see how big of an impact just one town can make with diverting food away from the incinerator in Newark, or from landfills.
Yeah, absolutely. And so just to kind of, for somebody who says, okay, I get it, composting is good for the earth, like what are some of the other, benefits for communities in the world about composting? Like if you were to kind of give a high level kind of, 5 points, like this is why it's important. Somebody might be completely clueless. What would those be?
Oh, there's a variety of things. There's a list of ways that like finished compost can be applied, obviously primarily in farming, and that can significantly lower the amount of synthetic fertilizers that are being used to grow at on large scale commercial farms, but it can also be used locally. It can be used in municipal groundwork and keeping, and whether it's in parks, the sides of highways. There's a lot of kind of earthworks that are being done along the sides of highways, and that's a way to minimize erosion, capture moisture. Also, it's a way to filter over like wetlands and pastures, and it's very absorbent. So there are a variety of ways that there are practical applications, quite a few practical applications.
I would also say just, a lot of people think when they throw their lettuce or food in the trash, it goes to a landfill and there it'll start breaking down. Mm-hmm. But that is not actually the case, because in a landfill, there's no oxygen. And in order for food to break down, you need to have microbiology, you need to have microbes. and they can't thrive if there's no oxygen. So, you know, there's a statistic that a head of lettuce takes 25 years to break down in a landfill. And I think most people don't really know that or think about that. So in that breakdown process in a landfill, it's creating a lot of methane gas, which is, you know, a very potent greenhouse gas. And so if you multiply that one head of lettuce by all the tons that we throw into a landfill every year, it's very problematic for the environment. So, you know, taking food scraps out of a landfill or out of an incinerator is very helpful because it reduces the greenhouse gases. But then you also have like a finished product to be able to use. So, you know, we always say, like some people say to us, oh, well, I'll just throw it down my garbage disposal. Isn't that okay? And it's okay, but then you still lose all the value of that food scraps that, you know, that it can become. So, yeah.
The other interesting thing, I find it interesting. So with incineration, they have to power the furnace, and food scraps carry a lot of moisture. And so when you are bringing in, you know, tons of you know, moisture rich material, it just requires a lot more energy. And we spoke with one person involved in incineration, and who said that they would probably be happy to move the organics material out of that waste stream, because it does allow them, if you take it out of their waste stream, it allows them to be more efficient with the material that they are incinerating. So I thought to myself, like, it makes sense that there can be kind of a comprehensive approach to managing waste that includes on some level all of the existing methods, but not, you know, but trying to find the most sustainable, environmentally friendly combination of ways to do it. And obviously composting can manage, you know, close to 50% of our solid waste in the nation and probably the world. I think the statistic is probably the same, if not more, elsewhere. But so composting can have a significant impact in a variety of ways.
Yeah, that's really mind-blowing. And, you know, I know that this conversation was more kind of a grassroots, like what can we do as homeowners, residents, you know, but just out of curiosity, on a, you know, you spoke about how much food waste there is, and, you know, on the commercial side of things, like, are there, you know, laws and regulations on, you know, that are making headway in composting, you know, kind of on a state level, national level? Like, can you maybe touch upon that just a little bit?
Yeah, it's interesting because most people think that the food waste generated is really like coming from big corporations, hospitals, universities. But when you look at the statistics, it's really residential food waste is the bulk of the food waste that gets thrown away. So, but New Jersey just passed a food waste law that that requires large scale producers, so companies or institutions that produce more than 1 ton per week of food waste, they're going to have to recycle that food waste either through composting or through something called anaerobic digestion AD facilities. Part of the problem in New Jersey is there's not a lot of these facilities, and this law is only going to apply if your site is within 25 miles of a composting site or an AD facility. So if you're not, then you kind of get, you know, you don't have to
Exempt.
Yeah, you get exempt.
Yeah.
So things are changing in New Jersey with the Department of Environmental Protection to try and allow for like small scale processing of compost. Right now, you have to bring food waste to a large scale processing site, and again, there's not a lot in New Jersey. So we work with the New Jersey Composting Council, which is like a nonprofit for composting, advancing composting education, and they're doing a lot of good work with the state to try and get more composting infrastructure here.
Great. Well, I think you guys are doing some really good work too. And I think that maybe you didn't know it when you kind of started this, but you kind of stepped into a vacuum. And I have to really just, you know, commend you for, you know, just being socially responsible, taking the time to educate people about this, and just making some important strides in, you know, sustainable responsibility, So I really appreciate you guys taking the time to be with me today. Is there anything else that you might want to share in terms of your growth? I mean, I know you guys are hiring drivers, for example. Like,
Yeah.
is there anything else that that we can share or help you guys in the growth of your business?
Well, hopefully we'll be we applied for a grant actually to get an electric vehicle, so that's the next kind of thing we're trying to build out our fleet in a more environmentally friendly way. But it's challenging because there's not a lot of electric vehicles out on the market, and if they do exist, they're extremely expensive. So we hopefully will get that grant, which will enable us to kind of reach more communities. Right now that's kind of one of the stumbling blocks for us, is just to make sure that our infrastructure is where it needs to be to service more people. But you can certainly find us at we're doing a lot of eco fairs, considering it's Earth Month now, and we'll be out in the community doing a lot of events. So if people are interested and want to get out into those eco fairs, we're excited to meet people.
Great. And I think, as I mentioned to you at the chamber event, I'm hosting a real estate and marketing conference in the fall at the Short Hills Hilton. And I plan on having kind of a vendor alley, like a New Jersey small business crafts and vendor alley, kind of geared towards households and homeowners. And so we're going to, I hope, have about 250 realtors there. And I would love for you guys to have a table there so you can educate realtors so that they can then pass on the message to their clients and hopefully multiply the effect of the good things that you're doing.
Yeah, that would be great. We're looking forward to that.
Awesome, guys. Thank you so much for your time, and we'll see you around town.
Yes.
Thanks so much. Have a
Thank
good
you.
Thank you.
And thank you all for listening. Hopefully you'll come experience New Jersey with us on the next episode of This